Hey, this is CJ with CompRCC.com, and in this series of videos I'm going to be assembling the new Team Associated B5m team kit. In this segment I'm building the ball differential. Lay out your parts, make sure you got a clean work area. You don't want to get any grime or dust inside your differential. The diff rings have a lot of glazing and they're not always perfectly smooth. Some of them even have a edge. There's a definite difference between one side and the other. The metal's a little more rounded on the edges, a little sharper edge on the other. One of the things you want to do is polish these diff rings before you install them, and then give them a good cleaning afterwards. Make sure that you've gotten any grime and grit off them from the polishing process. There's a variety of ways to polish these up. I'm using 600 grit sandpaper. Some people will use an old out drive and put the diff ring on there and swirl that around on the sandpaper to polish that up. I do not have an old diff ring with me at the moment. I believe Tamiya even makes a special tool that is basically a block of aluminum with a ring around it, and you put your diff rings on there and polish them. And you can also just use a piece of two-sided tape, peel it off, leave the backing on one side, stick your ring on there, and then just polish. Make sure that when you do your polishing that you're doing it on a smooth surface, a piece of glass, marble table, hardwood, whatever it is you want it to be level, because the whole idea is to get rid of any imperfections, any hide spots in this. And I'm not going to demonstrate the sanding process because it's pretty obvious, you know, what you're doing. You're just scrubbing this thing around in circles, you know, back and forth. Change your finger position several times so you're not hot spotting one portion of it or another. And again, just make sure that this is on a totally smooth surface. Hopefully the camera will be able to pick this up. You can see the difference. Obviously that's the diff ring that's been polished. And I generally polish both sides of the diff rings because both sides run up against metal. The side that runs against the out drives, you have to lube that up, and there is potential slippage there. And the other side has the balls rolling against it, so it's best to polish both sides. So my diff rings are polished. I'm going to go ahead and start with the thrust assembly. Put a bead of black grease around that washer. You want to put a lot of grease on here. I mean, not ridiculous, but the idea is to create a surface for these 6 little bearings to stick to. Sink them into the grease like that. Now those bearings are stuck in the grease there. Put more on top. And take your top washer. Slide that down. And then just ease that down onto there. And then just kind of roll your fingers around so that you got the bearings tucked in there and grease all around. So that's what the thrust bearing assembly looks like. Be sure to clean your hands well in between these various steps. So start with the female outdrive, and you can go ahead and slide the bearing in there. Put a ring of diff lube around the outdrive. Seat your ring in there. Just smooth the excess diff lube around there. Set that down. Do the same thing with the male outdrive. And then set that one down. Now we take the diff gear, and you can slide the bearing into there. More diff lube. Run a bead around here, squeezing glob into each of the holes for the diff balls. Now you take your diff balls and you just kind of pop into the little holes there. And the bearing just dropped out, that's no big deal. You can put that in later in the process if you wish. So now there's a nice bead of lube on the other side, but since I've just pushed all of these through, there's not as much over here, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little more in there. In this case, I can just squirt a nice blob on top and then just run it around the edge with my finger. And that's what we're looking for there. All of the diff balls in place. So now we take the thrust assembly and slide that through the outdrive with the female side, the one with the bearing. Use that on in. Drop the bearing back into our gear. Set that gear down on top of that outdrive. And then put the male outdrive in from the other side. Now, since this is a new diff assembly and a new spring, Associated recommends that you pre-compress. You only need to do that one time. Just a quick up and down with a pair of pliers. Drop that spring down into the outdrive and take this little T-nut, slide that down. Can help to take a wrench and just hold that over the end there as you start tightening this nut. Okay, now that it's started to thread, the Team Associated directions say to compress this all the way and then back it off. That might work well for someone who's just going to go out and start blasting the car immediately and not properly break in the differential. I'm not going to do that. It generally doesn't give you a good result. I'm going to tighten this down a bit. As that T-nut is starting to come down, I'm going to start checking it. Okay, see, we've got rotation going there. Feels pretty good. So at this point, I'm not going to do anything else to that. I've got counter rotation from the other side. I'm going to assemble this into the transmission, and then I'm going to do a break-in process before the car is driven. And this little cover can go over the side with the bolt. Just slide that on down. Again, you can just use a wrench like that and slide that into place.